And I believe that, I believe very much that there would be a significant rise in Sanatana Dharma from this stage onwards, to find out which is the worst possible time to keep India as much, shackled in poverty and distress as far as possible. And he found the best muhurta for it. And the next few years are the most crucial years to the rapid transformation of our country, and several forces of the world are not happy about this. Jai Shri Krishna, Uncle Ji. Namaste.
Namaste, Abhigya ji.
Namaste, Ravi ji. How are you doing?
We are doing great. We are.
Are we live now, or
have you with us? We are live, yes.
Oh, okay, okay. That's nice. Nice to hear. And thank you for inviting me to this program today. I'd like to speak about wide variety of subjects relating to Bharat's past, present, and the future. So thank you again. Namaste.
Thank you. Welcome. And we have quite a good gathering today. They were all eagerly waiting for you to join. And I'm not wasting too much time. I'm giving the mic to Vidya ji to give your introduction.
A quick introduction, Abhigya ji. Yeah. So namaste and a very good evening and a very warm welcome to one and all here. We have with us a very special guest who is none other than Shri Abhigya Anand ji, our youngest speaker on the platform of Satyameva Jayate. Abhigya ji, who is a prodigy in Vedic astrology and the world's youngest astrologer, also happens to be the founder director of the Prajna Jyotisha Institute, a professor of astrology, as well as one of the most followed researchers in astrology. Abhigya ji, who hails from Karnataka, was homeschooled from the age of 6 under the guidance of his parents, especially his mother, who encouraged him and his younger sister to take up a road less traveled with respect to education. Despite severe social backlash, Abhigya ji followed his passion and went on to do research in ancient Vedic astrology. Along with his research, he also does business analysis and financial forecasting and is able to provide insights and guidance to various institutions and investors around the globe. Major organizations and traditional investors hailing from South and North America, as well as East and Central Asia, have sought his guidance, and Abhigya ji helped them optimize their strategies and outcomes, as well as navigate their global situation. After he founded the Prajna Jyotisha in 2018, when he was just 13 years old, Abhigya ji went on to make a series of immensely successful predictions that made several skeptics of astrology change their perspective literally overnight. His predictions have been published in over 150 newspapers and major news networks in over 70 countries around the world. One of the most accurate predictions made by him in 2019 was when he forecasted the 2020 global pandemic, recession, and subsequent transformation of the world. As per several independent and authentic sources, this prediction of Abhigya ji has been the most popular since the times of the well-known Nostradamus. He went on to make more accurate predictions, including that about the Russo-Ukrainian war, the boom and bust of cryptocurrency, etc., regularly streaming these predictions onto his YouTube channel, which is called Conscience. Most recently, Abhigya ji accurately predicted on the 4th of October 2023 the Hamas terror attack on Israel exactly 3 days before it actually happened. Abhigya ji was able to predict not only the right date of the terror attack, he was also able to point out the right location of the attack as well as predict its magnitude. The video having this recent prediction hit over 1 million views and went on to make many more non-believers into ardent believers of Jyotisha, that is astrology. At the age of 12, after being homeschooled, Abhigya ji developed his own study and research methodology. He went on to complete the advanced literature degree, that is Sahitya, from the government of Karnataka despite his young age. Abhigya ji combines this knowledge of Sanskrit and Vedic scriptures to decipher, understand, and apply several ancient disciplines such as Vedic astrology, astronomy, Ayurveda, and Vastu Shastra in real-life situations. Apart from academics, Abhigya ji enjoys assisting his parents and his sister in the upkeep of their Gaushala, having 23 cows. He has a fondness for cars and has a keen interest in sustainable mobility. Along with all his numerous achievements and projects, Abhigya ji studies Govigyan, that is the exploration of scientific methods that will help transform the environment for the better by proper usage of cows. Today, It's indeed an honor and a pleasure to have you amongst us. Dear Abhigya ji, thank you so much for joining us. We are eagerly looking forward to your talk. The floor is yours. Over to you, Ravi.
Jai Shri Krishna.
Thank you, Vidya ji.
Yeah. Jai Shri
Jai Shri Krishna. Abhigya ji, I am handing over the mic to you. Once you have completed, let me know. I'll open it for questions. Mic is yours.
Jai Shri Krishna, and thank you so much, everybody, for coming today to our program. And thank you, Ravishankar ji, as well as Vidya Akaji, for also having me on this podcast today. I'd love to discuss several subjects, especially related to Bharath, in today's podcast. And one thing which I strongly believe till date is that any achievement that is ascribed to me as such, I believe, it is all by God's grace entirely. I'm just a nimitta, and a nimitta means just an instrument. Nimitta matram bhava sabyasaja, says Lord Krishna in the Gita. Never once should one believe that, I have done this or I have done that. I strongly believe that for material purposes, we generally ascribe such results to ourselves, or others ascribe such results to ourselves. But we have to really understand that who am I at the end of the day? Who am I? Am I this body and the mind which has been ascribed all of these specific qualifications and attributes? Not at all. That's what the Vedanta says. The Vedanta says that this self is beyond all of those material qualifications, and hence one has to realize that this self is beyond all of that. And I believe that I'm just a nimitta, just an instrument in this global play. Whatever predictions are made till date are all because of God's grace and God. Basically, I get this intuitive feedback at times, not always, at times when I'm supposed to make a prediction, when a prediction is supposed to be made, and when that prediction is supposed to be accurate. Only if it is destined that specific prediction should be accurate and that specific information should be relayed to the people, which is the duty of an astrologer, I get some intuitive feedback when I'm making calculations. So astrology is this peculiar mix. The reason why I say peculiar is because it is not found in many other areas of science and art. It's a peculiar mix of science, art, and intuition, wherein you bring all the three together and use them for the benefit of the public. And many people think, why at all are predictions helpful when you cannot do much to change it? That's a very good question, of course. But when you know what is going to happen in the future, you eventually understand that this is all a cosmic interplay, that all of it is happening for a reason. And that reason is known to the Supreme alone. We can only try to analytically or intuitively figure out what that huge painting the Lord has in mind, but eventually we cannot reach the root of that. Just to understand that one concept is the whole gamut of astrology, Ayurveda, and other scriptures. And astrology also, on the material level, what I just mentioned now was on a higher level of understanding, but on a material level, astrology also helps one pre-diagnose things that are supposed to happen in the future and helps one to prepare oneself for the future, or prepare one's family, prepare one's society, prepare one's community, or even say prepare one's country for the future. And in some cases, as with the COVID situation, it also can help us prepare the whole world for the future. And now, at least if the whole world and countries and larger levels of societies aren't ready to make changes based on astrology, unfortunately, we as smaller units of society, as individuals, as families, at least can make appropriate changes to our lifestyle and to our general way of life overall, based on analysis about the future. I think this is a very important reason why the Lord has passed down this great astrological scriptures to us. Otherwise, there would not have been any reason to hand over the great treatises of astrology through the sages. There is no possibility that an ordinary mortal could have discovered all of these ancient scriptures. There is no possibility at all. Imagine, how can we analyze that a specific combination of constellations in the sky, when they align with a specific combination of grahas or planets or other celestial bodies in the sky, how on earth can any ordinary mortal figure out how that combination is related to what is happening on earth? How could you say that some star in the sky, for example, Antares in Scorpio, the constellation Scorpio or Vrishchika, impacts the geopolitical security scenarios on earth? So all of these magnificent discoveries have been made in ancient times and have been passed down to us. But the reason of why exactly a specific combination impacts the Earth, that information has not been provided to us. Again, this is due to some great reason. Maybe we are not supposed to know exactly how it happens. When Mars and Saturn come together in a specific sign, at a specific moment, in a specific time in history, a war breaks out. But the exact reason behind why this specific event is supposed to happen has not been given anywhere. The reason we don't know why we have not been provided with this information. But the fact is that it keeps on repeating, and this is part of an eternal cycle. Once we understand that the world is running based on an eternal cycle and everything has a reason to happen, at that time our minds can settle at peace, and we can start thinking of things that are greater than our material obsessions, especially trying to understand who we are. And on the more mundane plane, we can help our fellow brothers and sisters of this world in order to navigate their life in a better way. So that's the purpose of Jyotish Shastra. And I believe that Jyotish Shastra can be used in a positive direction if everyone wants to use it in a positive direction. And this is just basically a short introduction as to how Jyotish Shastra, or the study of astrology, helps humans navigate our samsara, our mundane lives. So today's discussion is about Bharata. So without further ado, I'd like to get into this subject. Bharata, the past, the present, and the future of our glorious country. This is the centerpiece of our discussion today. And this is a very deep subject. It is not possible to cover in a very short discussion. But I aim to make more videos by God's grace, if possible, in the future in this particular subject of Bharata. Especially, the reason why I'm delving into the past is because without the past, one cannot understand the future. The past has every key into the future. And contrary to what most people think, I am not an all-knowing sage. There are some people who ascribe this quality, but I am not that. I do not know exactly what will happen in the future. I am not a Trikala Jnani. There are many sages in the past who have been Trikala Jnanis. I am not even comparable to the dust at their feet. I am just capable of making a few analytical, a few analysis, sometimes aided by intuition. And most of the time, this combination does come out to be accurate. But again, it is nothing compared to the Trikala Jnana. This is analytical, and it is purely analytical observation based on the past and based on a few intuitive inputs here and there. So I study history avidly, and I'm very interested in the past of the entire world. I have observed certain trends, and there are a lot of brilliant historians who are far more brilliant than what I have been able to accomplish in terms of astrological research. But the problem is that these brilliant minds often overlook the concept of combining history with astrology. And in that process, they forget that there is one eternal pattern that is running. There are multiple eternal patterns that are running, in the background without our knowledge. And these patterns are sometimes very huge, like, for example, 220-year patterns, 400-year patterns. And sometimes they are very small ones, like, you have 20-year patterns, or say you have 10-year patterns, or say in human lives, you can even have patterns of a year or two. Some patterns are specific with 19-year patterns, some are 18-year patterns, and there are patterns that go even smaller, and there are patterns that even can go to the micro level and can reach seconds, basically, patterns that move in seconds. That's the sophistication and the advancement that our sages had invented at that level. They even measured the influences of the grahas in the, for a specific time frame that is required for the eye to blink, the nimisha. So that is how sophisticated our ancient timing system was. And the planets can impact several time frames, right from humongous time frames of thousands of years down to the blinking of the eye. And this has been documented in our Shastras. And that is the sophistication, the advancement, and the the powerful view that our sages had of the past. And I'd like to just present a small figment of that imagination today in this conversation. So I'd like to also mention a couple of things regarding the great conjunctions. So the great conjunctions are a series of events that happen Jupiter is basically one of the grahas involved in the Great Conjunction. Jupiter takes 12 years to complete one full revolution of the zodiac. Now, for beginners, I would just like to explain what the zodiac is. For those of you who don't know about this, the zodiac is a continuum, a belt around the ecliptic. It is relative to the Earth. We are not talking about the solar system and not talking about how many years Jupiter takes to revolve around the sun. Rather, here we are talking about how many years Jupiter takes to move around this belt known as the zodiac. It is not purely imaginative. It is totally relative to the Earth. So when making predictions, we don't give much importance to the positions in the solar system itself. Rather, we give more importance to the positions that are relative to the Earth. For example, even though Jupiter and Saturn might be poles apart in the solar system, if they appear to be near each other from the plane of view from the Earth, then we automatically regard that as significant enough to cause a massive change in the world. And how exactly that position impacts the world, very few clues have been given, but there is no concrete observation as to that fact. But there is historical data to support how it works. So I have studied many great conjunctions, although not entirely. There is a lot more to do, and there's lots to research in this specific field, from triplicities to angular distances to latitudinal distances to longitudinal distances. There are several factors to take into consideration. I'm just providing a small figment of this in today's talk. And finally, I will relate this to how our country is going to prosper in the future, which is of course what a lot of us want to hear as well. But I'd like to explain a scientific view of how this could happen. A lot of us today really are waiting for that breakthrough for Bharata. But let me explain scientifically and astrologically how this is likely to occur. So I've traced a few great conjunctions from the year 392 AD, which is a very significant time frame after all. Year 400 to 600 AD was one of the greatest periods for our cultural growth, actually from 300 to 500 AD. But more specifically, we can just say that the period between year 400 and year 500 was really, really good. But the transformation came around the mid-6th century AD, and that is when things went a little bit bad for our country. Initially, the Hunas invaded our country around that specific time frame, and tracing the astrological positions, it seems to be quite perilous for the country around that time frame. And there came the next major event in the world. On the year 640, Islam rose around the world. Islam was founded in the year 640. That is when Muhammad basically founded Islam, and it quickly snowballed into a political movement, a religio-political movement that swept the whole world, large parts of the world, and came to our doorstep as well in 600 years approximately. This has done a lot of massive changes for the world, this major event. And I've observed exactly when this happened. This happened when Guru and Shani were located in the sign of Kumbha Rashi. Kumbha, as all of you, as most of the people who are into Jyotish Shastra would know, is an airy sign. So it facilitated the quick and rapid movement of Islam around the world, making it one of the most influential events of the world. Of course, whether it is for the good or bad is totally decided by destiny at the end of the day. It has done a lot of changes after all. That is very clear. Many changes around the world, and unfortunately, a major part of the history after Islam was founded resulted in great misery for the world. This is the truth, and I would not like to sugarcoat this. This is the truth. The founding of Islam, although in 640 AD, had massive consequences for the lives of millions of people, in fact, billions of people in the coming few years. And primarily, the 600 years after Islam was founded were very significant, and Islamists basically streamlined this process of jihadism and began to destroy great ancient religions, great ancient civilizations. Rising beyond just the religious factor, this event was key to destroying the lives of millions of people in later years when many countries were invaded, primarily in Iran, where they were following a concept of Sanatana Dharma was being followed in the form of Zoroastrianism in Iran as well, wherein they were worshipping Agni, basically, which is also the fundamental principle of the Vedas and our Sanatana Dharma. They're worshipping Agni as Jyothi, as Jwala, as as the Bhaskara. And there were several ancient civilizations worshipping different facets of light. For example, Surya or Bhanu, Bhaskara, or the sun god was worshipped across the entire ancient world, because we always look forward to light. Whenever there is darkness in our lives, we look forward to light. And what is that great source of light, life, inspiration, and energy? It is obviously the sun god. Apart from that, it is fire that we can see on earth, which is why in Sanatana Dharma, we light lamps during special occasions. And in the same way, in Iran, they were following this specific, modern day Iran, of course, is totally different. It's become the hotbed of, Islamic jihadism and all of those, concepts. But in the ancient times, Iran was a very forward-looking, progressive, peaceful civilization that accounted for a significant part of the global GDP, as well as a significant part of global discoveries. It was very much in sync with our Sanatana Dharma and was an offshoot of it itself. And if you look at some verses, I would not like to divert from the topic entirely, but if you look at some verses from the, from the Avesta, which is almost entirely Zoroastrianism is based on Sanskrit. Actually, the entire language, the entire texts are all based on, Sanskrit texts, especially the verse Kayena Vacha Manasindriyeva Buddhatmanava Prakriti Subhavat Karom Yadyat Sakalam Parasmai Shri Narayana Iti Samarpayami is almost entirely copied. And even the linguistic similarities are so clear, and there is no doubt that Sanatana Dharma was being followed, at least in an offshoot manner, in Iran. However, alas, it all came to an end when Islam swept through the region, of course, often with very horrendous brutality, something that has not been experienced for centuries together. Unfortunately, this is what happened, and this has astrological underpinnings to it. And I have studied a few more great conjunctions, even after 640 AD, many more great conjunctions, but it will take a long time to explain what happened in each great conjunction. But yes, 1200 AD is another significant great conjunction. 1206 AD, not 1200 AD. 1206 AD is another significant great conjunction that we have seen. And what happened during this specific time frame was also very important. We saw Genghis Khan rise. In fact, if you look at history, I'd recommend most of you listening to this podcast, if you would like to navigate to the portion where Genghis Khan took over as a leader of the Mongols in the year 1206. And this is when the whole world basically changed and the Mongol invasion took place. Genghis Khan basically took over nearly 75% of the existing world at that time. However, Bharat was untouched at least, whereas the Islamists had already entered our country by this time. Already there was an incursion. Now comes the other major. What I'm trying to explain here is that great conjunctions, especially significant ones, have significant and large impacts on the future of the world, at least for 20 years and some for 400 years. Coming to the next one, it came 1603 AD. This is also a very significant great conjunction. Most of you have studied history. This is when the British Empire began to rise. And also a few significant and interesting events were we had the stock market invented around 601 to 603 AD. As far as I know, the first stock market in Amsterdam was introduced around 603 AD. And number three, for most of you who are very interested in history, sugar was invented in 1603. Now one might think, what relation does sugar have to the topic of our discussion today? But sugar is very significant. It has changed the whole world. It is responsible for half of our diseases which we have today, and it is also responsible for especially modern sugar, not the ancient form of sugar. I'm talking about this processed white sugar was invented in 1603 AD and was mainstreamed in this specific year, as far as I know, around this specific time. And that is also a major event. So generally what I've observed is that major events in the world happen close to great conjunctions. And this has been observed till 2020 AD. I can give numerous examples. 1940, approximately, there was a great conjunction. We had the World War and the global order was reset. 1960, the Cold War began to play a significant role in geopolitics, and there was a major growth in semiconductors and other industries. 1980s, the internet began to rise, and in the 2000s, we had even more rapid development across the geopolitical sphere. New powers began to emerge, and China began to emerge. The internet began to take over as a significant deciding factor in the future of the world. And now, finally, we came to 2020 AD. So when I made a prediction about the world's future in 2019 and mentioned that there would be severe danger, I took into account several factors such as these to come to a conclusion that 2020 AD would be one of the most significant turning points in human history, which would be preceded by one great disease or one great war. Unfortunately for all of us, it happened to be that there was a great disease that swept through the world, along with a warlike response. Never before has the world seen all doors shutting and everyone masking themselves. Never before has that happened in the history of the world. And that happened in 2020. Why? Why, you may ask? Great conjunctions happen every 20 years. Why was 2020 so special? Jupiter and Saturn were the closest to each other since the year 1200. So we can directly trace back the significance of 2020 to 1206. And 1206 was the year when Genghis Khan invaded. Now, I think most of our viewers would have a view of why all of this is happening and why the world is impacted by great conjunctions. If you have more doubts, you can just do a research yourself if you have knowledge of Jyotish Shastra and analyze exactly why and where it happens. At least a basic vision will be possible if you have a basic knowledge of Jyotish Shastra at this stage. So now what I believe is that now one more concept which I'd like to explain here is that every 220 years or so, the great conjunctions move to the next triplicity. So there are triplicities, which means to those of you who know astrology, this is a small 2-minute detour from our conversation, a mathematical detour. So here, what we are going to be seeing is that the zodiac is a 360-degree belt, and it is divided into 12 compartments. And each compartment is highly significant. And as you would have already calculated, each compartment is 30 degrees. So amongst these compartments, there are triplicities of compartments, which are known as rashis. Basically, rashis are the compartments. Rashis means groups. Rashis means collections. So these rashis have collections of stars within them, and each star has a unique profile, a unique identity, and they are called nakshatras. When they are combined together, a few stars in a specific pattern, a specific combination, they are called nakshatras, which means that which does not move. So already the great ancient sages had realized that these stars do not move, whereas the Greeks were already thinking that these were some sort of light bulbs hung in the sky. And the world was basically, and they were hung with, some sort of thing from the sky. That's what the rest of the world was thinking. Whereas we had already realized this was nakshatra. Nakshatra means that which does not move, which automatically implies that we are moving. The nakshatras are basically sthira. They're always in the same place. So this we had already realized long, long ago. And these nakshatras, now these 306, in this 360-degree belt, 30 degrees is one compartment, and basically triplicities are formed every 5 compartments, which is 150 degrees. Every 220 years, Jupiter and Saturn meet in a specific triplicity only. So every 220 years, this changes to the next triplicity, and this can be observed if we do a small, perusal of the last few great conjunctions back to hundreds of years. And now this triplicity is changing in Bharat's favor. And that is the main point of this topic. I took some time to explain this because it was important to explain why this is happening. What are the astrological underpinnings of this happening? And hence, now we are coming to the subject that now the tide is turning in the favor of Bharat. The triplicities are now in the earthy signs, basically. And they're very soon going to be moving into the airy signs, but now they are in the earthy signs. And I believe very much that there would be a significant rise in Sanatana Dharma from this stage onwards, there would be a significant rise. But I would kindly request people not to take into not to take misunderstood note of this, that all other religions would fall and Bharat would increase rapidly, like immediately. It is a long-term process. Religions have cycles of over 2,000 years. It is not going to happen in a jiffy. It is going to take time, and Sanatana Dharma is going to grow from this stage, and all of us will cooperate automatically in this growth of Sanatana Dharma. But there will be some people who will not cooperate in this, and I'll talk about them as well very soon. I'll talk about certain periods, especially, not getting too much into the political aspects, but purely on the astrological side. There are specific dangers from specific areas in the world to our country, and the next few years are the most crucial years to the rapid transformation of our country, and several forces of the world are not happy about this. That's for sure, because what they are seeing in the growth of our GDP, in the growth of our people as a country, in the change of our identity as a country, and the rapid evolution of what we think of ourselves. Basically, that is what is happening now. There is a rapid evolution in our identity itself. Instead of just looking at the numbers that we see in the stock markets and the economic figures, we should look at the identity. The identity is evolving along with the other aspects, basically, and the identity is the center of it. Once you realize who you are, you can make progress on what you will become in the future. If you don't even know who you are, then where are we going to go? So the identity is changing, fortunately for us. For the last 400 years, this identity was eroding. Now it is beginning to grow. And again, all of you might know why for the last 400 years, this identity has been eroding. Obviously, there's no one to blame here. From the cosmic angle, there is no one to blame here. It is about power. Power always moves. Power is Lakshmi, Rajya Lakshmi. So Lakshmi is always moving. We cannot expect Lakshmi to sit in one place for too long. Be it Bharata, be it Europe, be it anywhere. So Lakshmi has a cycle. Wealth and power always are moving. We cannot expect it to be in one place. Even fame, for that aspect. Fame is there today, tomorrow it is not there. Money is there today, tomorrow it is not there. It just goes away. And after all, when the human life is itself so limited, how can we expect countries to be unlimited and, to be long living? Of course, some countries are long living, some powers are long living. Every power has a cycle. And now the powers which ruled the world for the last 400 years, they are coming to their decline gradually. But I do not mean the United States of America is coming to a decline. I'll come to that later. But the European continent in general is coming to the decline of its power. It's already come to the decline. But now this is going to be a turning point in the phase when other powers will begin to take over from this stage. This transfer already happened in the year 2003 approximately, but no one would realize how that happened. It has already started in the year 2003. And I also did some research on the year 1968, but that transformation has also occurred. So let's say on a long-term view that the next 400 years are the years of the so-called third world countries. I would like to call them the recently oppressed countries, including Bharat and African countries as well, which have been exploited for far too long. And just for most history buffs here, I'd like to also add another important concept. The year between 1300 and 1400, we had both India and Africa rising simultaneously. In 1300, obviously, even the Mughals had entered India, but still the Vijayanagar Empire was beginning. And on the other hand side, in Africa, we had very much, prosperous civilizations growing, and some of the very richest people, richest civilizations were actually running in Africa. Now that same combination is repeating once again, and we should be very optimistic towards Bharat. And unfortunately, even now, a lot of people are still going out of Bharat. But as they say, even in the science of investment, the moment that everyone, does not see value in something, when they start exiting something, although that thing has inherent value, but everyone starts to lose hope in it, that is when there is a turning point for that specific asset. And if we talk about Bharat in the same sense, if we talk about, our overall identity as a same sense, when the most people are losing hope and going outside the country for every little purpose, like even for learning something. My dear friends, there was a point of time in our country when everyone used to come to our country and learn anything that they wanted to learn. Alas, at the present moment, everything has changed because, as I mentioned earlier, Lakshmi Mata has exited from our country. She's going to re-enter very soon. But at that point of time, prosperity had exited. When prosperity exits, chaos comes in. And when chaos comes in, corruption comes in. A lot of people would say corruption is the reason why Bharat is failing and everything. That's absolutely right. But for corruption also, there is a reason. And that reason is even deeper than that. It is karma. There was a point of time when Bharat was so high in the global state, but there was a point of time when Lakshmi Mata left and bad karma began to take place. People started fighting amongst each other, and people began to become insensitive. There was a new power order that was established. Instead of peace and prosperity, people started discriminating amongst themselves. This is not what Sanatana Dharma has taught us. Sanatana Dharma says samana. Samana is the concept of Sanatana Dharma. It's equality. Unfortunately, there are so many people who misunderstood this whole concept and started misusing, I would say, certain auxiliary concepts of social order and converted those concepts into the caste system and caste-based discrimination. Brahmane Gabihastini Shunichaiva Shwapake cha Pandita Samadarshinaha. The Bhagavad Gita says Panditaha Samadarshinaha. There is no difference between all forms of life. Everything is equal. That is the basic philosophical underpinning of entirety of Sanatana Dharma. How can things be contradictory? It is not possible. It's only the human mind that we can make contradictions. And because of that caste-based discrimination, and after discrimination, it didn't stop at that. Bharatiyas, unfortunately, at that time, at the starting point of our decline, started to enact political discrimination as well. And that is where the country fell apart. And that is why today we have so many problems. Pakistan, Afghanistan, so many problems we have today because of that. That is karma. That is destiny after all. Nothing to change at this stage. But now we have the chance. Now we have the chance to unite as a country, to stand up, to progress, and to make a statement for ourselves, to recognize our identity, and to basically speak in our own languages also. I'm ashamed today that I'm speaking in English, actually. Mama ativa prita bhasha Sanskrita bhasha eva. Sanskrita bhasha eva bhashayitum shaknomi, parantu atra kopi na santi ye khalu Sanskrita bhasham bhashayanti. Ataha aham Angla bhashayam bhashatum atra agatosmi. Parantu asmin vishwe भविष्ये सर्वे जनाः संस्कृत भाषां, तमिल भाषां, मलयालम भाषां, कन्नड़ भाषां, हिंदी भाषां सर्वं भाषयन्ति इति अहं प्रार्थनां करिष्ये. So I love Sanskrit Bhasha and I love to speak it, but unfortunately, because of the present scenario, the world wants to speak in English. We want to listen English. Hence, I am propelled to speak in English today. But I love Sanskrit. I love Tamil. And also, I love all languages of our country, Malayalam, Kannada, Telugu, and Hindi, everything. And I'm trying my best to learn it as well. But somehow, when speaking in public, it makes a little bit, it actually doesn't allow me to speak with fluency. I'm sorry about that for everybody. And about the short term, I've talked more about 400 years and 200 years and 20 years now. That might be a little bit, difficult to fathom or sometimes off-putting. But let's talk about the present and the short term. Yes, we've talked about the turning point as 2020 approximately for the world. But let's talk about what's going to happen in the next 4 or 5 months. Unfortunately, as I mentioned earlier, there are many forces who are against the progress of Bharat at this stage. There are many forces, countless of them, and especially the present powers. We think the United States is our best friend as such, but there have been several times in the past as well wherein they've actually, caused a lot of harm to us. And not only in the past, even in the present. There have been times when the United States also, as an extension of the British Empire, has caused us a lot of harm. So that's not something to be, after all, it's geopolitics. We can't blame anybody. It's a play of power, after all. And Europe as well. There are many forces in Europe also who are not very happy with India's progress. Obviously, we have our own neighbors, no need to talk about them. We have Pakistan, we have China, we have so many more. We have the whole concept of jihadism itself that is against our country, that wants to see us in, the dustbin of global civilizations. But that's not going to happen. Unfortunately, for all those who want to, trouble our country and our identity, as Sanatanis, that's not going to happen. although there will be some kantakas on the way, some thorns on the way, the next 5 months are especially very crucial. There will be many thorns on the way in this period. The reason is that we are entering the Rahu phase of our country. And unfortunately, when our country's independence was planned, looks like Lord Mountbatten had consulted some astrologers to find out which is the worst possible time to keep India as much shackled in poverty and distress as far as possible. And he found the best muhurta for it and gave us the best muhurta on the 15th of August in the midnight. And that is very unfortunate. Midnight, announcing the country as independent at midnight when Rahu and Ketu are basically cordoning all of the grahas up. This is perfectly orchestrated, I would say. And Pakistan was even worse, a few hours before us, even worse, basically. And their combinations were even worse. And unfortunately, they did not even correct it later. Fortunately for us, our leaders, at least being forced by some of the good astrologers at that time, created one more day, the 26th of January 1950, as the Republic Day of our country. And that is again a turning point because of which we are saved to a large extent, because of which we are seeing the light of the day. Otherwise, the last 75 years, we have seen many victories, we have seen many positive things, but in short, the last 75 years were very much, distressing, especially the rise of corruption and the scandals and so many horrible things which are continuing to this date. But I hope and pray and believe, even through astrology, that this all will change very soon. And that I believe is going to happen. But the next 4 months, coming back to the subject, is going to be very difficult. I've also mentioned this in the past, especially around January to April. This specific time frame is going to be really bad. There are going to be a lot of foreign conspiracies against our country. Many horrible things are likely to happen. I had mentioned that there's going to be a terrorist attack in the world between October and November on the 4th of October 2023. But I mentioned that there will be two major theaters for this to happen. One theater would be in the Middle East, approximately, had made a circling up of a zone, a danger zone, wherein there would be a major terrorist attack. And I made another zone, which was Bharath, especially the southern part of Bharath this time. Of course, not to leave out the northern part, but the southern part also had mentioned this time on. But since the attacks and the massive violence and slaughter of innocent people has already happened in the Middle East, and jihadism is on full display, and on the other hand side, the killings of children are also on full display in the Middle East, unfortunately, we as Bharat are saved a little bit. The negative energy is diversified, and we are not going to be as badly affected as it was initially, purposed to be, as it was initially supposed to be. However, there is a very strong chance that we are also likely to be affected before April. We need to be on alert. The country needs to be on alert, especially from separatist forces like jihadism that are knocking on our doors every single day. And I have no regret in stating this at all. I do not need to make any apologies for this fact as well. Unapologetically, I would like to say that yes, the modern view of Islam, the present view of Islam, the jihadist view of Islam that has been spreading around the world is responsible for the genocide of several cultures, responsible for the genocide of several civilizations, responsible for the genocide of several people around the world. And hence, this is also going to affect our country, and we must be aware of this. We must be careful. And of course, I'd like to mention one more important thing for all our Muslim brothers and sisters here. Islam is not jihadism. One should not confuse it with the other. Islam means surrender. That's it. Surrender to whom? Surrender to the ultimate, surrender to the supreme. You call the supreme Allah because you use the Middle Eastern language, Arabic, to call the Lord. We call him Bhagavan, we call him Parabrahman, we call him Paramatma. We have 1,008 names for the supreme, basically. And in several religions, you call the Lord in different ways. But the ultimate goal is to surrender to him and to renounce that doership. The doership, like I am doing this, I am doing that, the ego, to renounce that is Islam. And the true meaning of jihad, what is jihad? Jihad basically comes from the Sanskrit word jahatu. Jahatu means destroy. The Bhagavad Gita says jahatu kaman, destroy those illegitimate desires that come in your mind. Not go and attack other countries and, destroy their lives. You're supposed to destroy the ego within oneself. That is the true meaning of Islam, and that is echoed in, that is originated in Sanatana Dharma and later echoed in other religions. This is the truth, and you can check it out for yourself too. So I'd like to wind up today's important, discussion with on a positive note that we are beginning to rise. We must recognize our identity. We must abolish the negative things which are responsible for our downfall, including discrimination of society. And we must understand that the meaning of Brahmana is not some sort of birth-based order. Brahmana means that one who is trying to realize Brahman. Now, for me and you, it's very difficult to realize Brahman. It's very difficult. But we must be on the path. Anyone today who wants to be on the path of Brahman, who wants to realize that, is a Brahman. Very simple. It's very simple. It's based on vocabulary. That's all. So if you want to realize the Supreme, you're automatically a Brahmana. But for that, it's not very simple. There is a path. One has to quit non-vegetarian food. One has to quit alcohol. One has to quit harming other creatures. One has to quit addictions as much as possible. One has to lead a life based on the scriptural advice. One has to get up early in the morning. One has to do Trikala Sandhya Vandanam. One has to worship the light. One has to worship the Supreme 3 times of the day minimum. And one has to keep chanting the Lord's name as and when possible. So in the beginning of our conversation, I was chanting the Gayatri Mantra, which is the foundation of Brahman to be realized. So that is Brahmanism, not just because one is born to a Brahman mother and a Brahmana father and does not become a Brahmana. That is not the Brahmana. And if a Brahmana wants to be totally involved in business alone and totally involved in speculation, then he becomes a Vaishya automatically. That's all, right? So, and if someone wants to be atrocious and they want to torture people, then they automatically become Rakshasas. Very simple. It's just based on what you are, basically. Sometimes genetics do play a role, but in Kali Yuga, that doesn't matter at all. Genetics does not matter much. It's all about your mind. You can always change things. Even if your family has a criminal history, you can be the best person on planet Earth, and several people have proven this. So hence, we must abolish discrimination as Hindus, as Sanatanis. We must abolish corruption in the financial level. Lord Krishna says Shuchi is important. Shuchi means cleanliness. Cleanliness of the body, cleanliness of the mind, cleanliness of the system, cleanliness of our finances. That is important. So cleanliness of the mind, of course, I mentioned discrimination and other aspects. Cleanliness of the body, avoid harming other creatures. Cleanliness of society is only possible through destroying corruption once and for all. And cleanliness of our entire system is possible when we realize our identity. Jai Hind, Jai Bharat, and Jai Shri Krishna, Jai Shri Ram. Wish you all the very best.
I'm going to the first question as it appears on my screen. Shaunav, I'm going by the order.
Jai Shri Krishna.
Yeah, please go ahead.
Yeah, so my question was, will India progress in its spiritual path, and will our spiritual progress be hand in hand with our economic progress? And how long will it take for us to achieve development?
Thank you, Ji. That was a very good question, a very important one, and it is central to the topic of our discussion as well. Yes, Bharat has been the spiritual capital of this world ever since the beginning of this world. And it will continue to be, just that in the middle, it was overshadowed by the problematic situations in the geopolitical and economical sides. But now it is rising once again. Even during the worst periods of Bharat, we have seen some of the greatest minds of our country, spiritual minds, like Swami Vivekananda, Ramakrishna Paramahamsa, Srila Prabhupada. We have seen, and even in times of great adversity, we have seen, Kanji Mahapariva, who is our, Kulaguru. Basically. So we have seen such great individuals, such great, they are actually incarnations of the Supreme, even during worst times of, geopolitical turmoil. Imagine how much more we will see when Bharat comes to a proper system. And yes, Bharat's spiritual and economic transformation will go hand in hand. But apart from that, I'd like to also mention that it's not going to be all rosy as it sounds either. We are in Kali Yuga. We have to also, come to terms with the fact that we are in a slightly despicable time frame, basically, and a lot of bad things are going to happen. But alongside, good things also will happen, and the velocity of good things happening will be more than bad things in the coming few years.
Thank you, Shona, for your question. I'm moving to the next one. Lakshmi, can you unmute your screen? Unmute your mic.
Can you hear me, sir?
Yes, go ahead.
Yeah. Abhigya, I'm very glad to talk to you. And I want to ask you that what is the economy going to be gold or real estate going to be for the next future?
Yes, exactly. So did you mention economy and real estate? Sorry, I didn't get you exactly.
Yeah. Economy of the, real estate economy or gold economy in the future.
Yes, exactly. In this time of global change and global transformation, especially over the next 20 years, yes, both gold and real estate will be important, contrary to the popular opinion that real estate is not going to be important as much as other areas of investment in the future. I strongly believe real estate will also be important. More specifically, I'd like to mention one more important thing which I did not cover in the conversation, thanks to your question. 2040 approximately will be the time frame when real estate will become very important. Not real estate in the cities, though, agricultural land. When people start to realize that their food is rapidly falling in terms of quality, only a fraction of people are realizing that today. But there is a possibility that 80 to 90% of people in the world will suddenly, that will click, the food is not good. Once you realize that, there will be a hankering after land, hankering after cows, hankering after good food, organic food, right? And that is when land will become the most important asset. And people who have land, unfortunately, if you look at today, a lot of billionaires are buying up thousands of acres of land. Bill Gates has bought over 10,000 acres, if I'm right, probably even more than that in the US, fertile agricultural land. In India, also a lot of companies through shell, companies, they're also buying up large parts of land. And exactly during the COVID, when the global financial system was crumbling, the Karnataka government here opened up land purchases, and MNCs and several companies also began to make purchases. Almost the whole world is making agricultural land purchases, the intelligent part of the world and the privileged part of the world. But the commoners here think that agricultural land is a thing of the past. Let me tell you, my dear friends, it's a thing of the future. And I'm sure that it will be very important. And in terms of real estate, I mentioned, like to repeat that agricultural land is very important. And gold, of course, yes. This is a time wherein we are going to see in the next 20 years, we will see the transformation for the next 200 years. So imagine how many rapid changes will happen in the global order. At that time, some things which will hold value more than others will be gold. Obviously, the Indian economy and the Indian startup space, the Indian market space, the overall other areas of our Indian market and economy also will rise. But gold will be very important throughout this 20-year period.
Thank you, Lakshmi, for that question. I'm moving to the next one. When you ask the question, unmute your mic and ask the question. Please mute after you ask the question. Subha, go ahead.
Namaste, Abhigya. My interest would be for the year 2024. I wish to know the political stability of our nation. That is one thing. And along with that, will it showcase some big financial scams, just like the Harshad Mehta period in our stock market? Thank you.
That's a very good question, especially about the short term. Generally, the short term is kind of very much difficult to predict, but I will try my best to understand how the short term is going to play out for the world. What I believe is most likely to happen is that in terms of financial scams, not anything too serious will happen within our country at this stage, but old problems are likely to be pulled up at this stage. That is very much likely, especially over the next 5 months as such. Many old problems, many old, bad parts of our history of our country, etc., will be pulled up in the next 5 months. Many truths will tumble out, basically. It might be due to the political vendetta or something else, but overall, a lot of truths will actually tumble out during the next couple of months because Rahu is coming into picture. Some of these truths might be orchestrated as well, but because Rahu is very unpredictable, even an astrologer after studying years also cannot tell anybody how Rahu is going to behave. Rahu is that kind of graha, and Rahu is beginning to affect our country at this stage. So one very important thing is that, yes, during the next lunar year is going to begin with Saturn and Mars at the 4. So I expect 2024 April to 2025 April to be one of the most complex years we have seen in recent times. So there might be some financial scams also involved in this specific time frame. There will also be many countries which will emerge as belligerents, basically, which will begin to form nationalistic identities. And within our country, there is also going to be some turmoil politically, especially within the next 5 months. It's really bad. With Rahul entering the space, it's really bad. So I think stability is something that's going out of the window at this stage.
Thank you. I'm going to the next question. Naveen, you can unmute and ask your question.
Hi, Abhigya ji. It's a great pleasure to ask you a question just to know for that. I wanted to ask that we have seen pandemic like COVID, and then just wanted to know, are we going to have such kind of pandemic kind of situation in another decade or something?
That's also a really good question. Of late, ever since COVID came into picture, a lot of people, unfortunately, have been peddling claims that there would be another massive disaster, another massive disease that's going to come up within 1 year, within 2 years. And news and media feed on to this like crazy. Like every time there is fear, they basically get a lot of revenue out of that generally. It is a huge boost. Like a little epidemic somewhere, and they will announce it as the next disease X. And this disease X is still hanging in the memories of people. And one thing which I'd like to mention is that pandemics also are in cycles. There is not going to be another major horrible thing. It is human cognitive bias, which makes us feel that what has already happened will repeat once again in immediacy. That is a human cognitive bias. Even astrologers struggle with that. Even I struggle with that sometimes. When a war is already happening, when I look at the next planetary position that is dangerous, automatically my human cognitive bias will tell me the next thing is also going to be a war. That has to be defeated. No, once the pandemic comes in 2020, doesn't mean we have another horrible one once again. When the pandemic came itself, I think within a month or two, I released a video saying that it would all be almost, declining after 2021 November. And the death rates rapidly declined. And now COVID is almost like a thing of the past. And WHO and also there was a subsequent prediction that by May 2023, it would all be wound up to a large extent. WHO also announced in May 2023 that COVID is no more a global health emergency. And one more thing is that, as I mentioned, pandemics are in cycles. So it's all cyclical. This cycle is over. The next pandemic will take many, many more decades to come into picture of this scale. So need not worry too much about it. However, the next 20 years will see a slight decline in global immunity. So the next 20 years will be bad for many diseases, but nothing as horrible as saying the whole world getting locked up once again and everything going back to square one. It is going to be bad, but not as bad as 2020. And there will be individual pockets of areas wherein there will be disease spreading and then subsiding, disease spreading and then subsiding. Nothing too bad.
Thank you, Abhigya. Is there time to pick one or two more questions?
Yes, no problems. Yeah.
Yes. Rahul, we can take 2 more questions. Yeah, the questions are coming up. So, Abhigya, in the meantime, can I ask you a question from the moderator side? You had mentioned actually in the past, different decades and all. The one question that popped in my mind is about Shankaracharya. There are 2 schools of thought where actually which century he lived in. Some people say he was actually 100 years later than Buddha, and it could be in the 8th century also. In the time period you mentioned, he was such a revivalist. Wouldn't have come up in the conjunctions that you had mentioned before?
Yes, very, very much possible. In fact, I believe that Adi Shankaracharya is actually, one of the greatest forces of Sanatana Dharma ever, basically, ever. Even today, we have not yet witnessed that kind of force till date. There have been great forces, but not as large as that. Basically, transforming the country that was ridden by horrible cults. Basically, even our Bharath was in horrible situation at that time, including there are even historical accounts of human sacrifice in certain pockets of the country. So that was the level we stooped down at that point of time. That was the level some of the people of Bharata stooped down. But Shankaracharya revived everybody, and of course, that was also during a great conjunction approximately. There are great conjunctions in year 600, in year 800, even before Christ also. So yes, he was certainly must have appeared around the great conjunction.
Thank you. Nebu, please go ahead with your question. You have to unmute your mic and ask your question. The mic will be on the right-hand side of your screen on the bottom. Unmute it and you can ask. I think it is taking time. Narayana, can you unmute?
Yes, sir. Namaskaram.
Go ahead.
My question is regarding Bharath. I have as per earlier classes of Abhigyaanand ji, did India on world enters into the Third World War or any other such situations? And is Bharat's role a key role, or what will it be? Thank you.
Good question. It has great, meanings to the future. So I believe that Bharat, unfortunately, will also be involved in this, and that is the only way that the new global order will also come up. It's a very unfortunate thing for sure, but it is most likely to happen. But again, I'd like to also mention that this is not the end of the world. There have been some people who have been using my image in thumbnails and writing that the world is going to end. And in 2020, the world will end. In 2023, the world will end. But the world is not going to end. It's not going anywhere. Everything is going to be fine. Just that there will be specific timeframes of great manslaughter, specific timeframes of great famine. All of that. It is routine for the world. Basically, it happens once in a while. It does happen. So it will happen once again, and Bharat is unfortunately going to be involved, affected in some ways, but will rise on the global order. Any country that tries to harm Bharat or bet against Bharat is not going to go down well in the history books.
Thank you. Nebu, can you unmute your mic? Yes, hello? Please go ahead. Please go ahead. We can hear you.
Will Constitution of India will be affected in coming years?
The question was whether our constitution will be changed or will be affected in the coming years when we are going to the glorious period.
Yeah, so in the previous video of mine about Bharat, which was largely, today's discussion was an expansion of that video. So in that video, I've mentioned that the political system of the country has to change. It will change. It is not my personal opinion alone. It is an astrological opinion. The whole framework of the country has to change. It will change, and there is no other way. It will happen over the next 20 years, slowly but surely. Many of the things that have oppressed us in the past, that have kept us under the false cloud of secularism, kept us under the false cloud of so-called, they call it religious unity, but it doesn't work that way most of the time. All of those things will have to change significantly, and proper equality will be brought into the picture. Nor is anyone going to be oppressed as such. Proper equality will be brought into the picture. It will happen over the next 20 years. And the next 20 years are highly significant. And I'm sure that the present regime, as well as the coming regime, will also ensure that this will happen. I'm quite confident of that. Yes, the constitution is likely to be changed significantly.
Thank you, Vidyaji. Vidyaji, is there a question from your side?
Yeah. Am I permitted to ask you one question, Abhigyaji?
Sure, Didi.
Okay. This is, it's to do now. We know that there are a lot of problems that which we'll be facing eventually. So could you suggest a single or, your favorite mantra or, some kind of a shloka that would bring, mental peace and, I leave it to you. Thank you, Abhigya.
Yes. That's a really good question to all the, disturbing rhetoric throughout the conversation. This is a really good question to, bring it to a peaceful level. I strongly believe that everyone should chant some mantra every day. Each person has their own favorite mantra. So for some it might be Ganesha, for some it might be Kartikeya, for some it might be Lord Shiva. So last time we made an eclipse video in which over 10,000 people chanted with us during the eclipse, which I believe has a 1,000-fold effect. So imagine 10,000 people chanting mantras, 1,000-fold effect. So in that video, I mentioned that anyone can choose their own mantra. You have your favorite mantra, you can choose that. You can even chant your guru's name. Like a lot of the people at our household, we chant Kanji Mahapariva's texts or name or something like that, or some mantra. Some of us chant Hare Krishna Mahamantra. It depends on what you would like to do and what you're already practicing since many days. Now, I practice Gayatri every day, thrice, Sandhya Vandanam, Trikala Sandhya Vandanam. I sometimes try to do 1008 Gayatri Japam. For a month or so straight, I did 1008 every day. That was really an energizing experience just for a month. Imagine if we do it for more time. And I plan to also restart that along with Samidadhanam, which is the ancient fire ritual that is supposed to be done in Pratha Sandhya and Sayam Sandhya. So today also I finished my Sandhya Vandanam and then came for the conversation. And even during the conversation before I began, I started Gayatri Mantra. So for me, personal favorite is Gayatri Mantra. And I can feel the energy of Gayatri Mantra sometimes. And that is what makes it so special. Even if my mind wavers during the Sandhya Vandanam, because that's the nature of the mind, Gayatri Mantra brings it back. Somehow it brings it back, at least back to the moment. So Gayatri Mantra is my personal favorite. And Om Gam Ganapataye Namaha is totally another level. That is also awesome. It energizes the Mooladhara Chakra. So that helps us basically root ourselves down, and it can create a powerful force to create peace and stability around the world, especially the Bija Gam. It is mentioned, Mooladhara Sthitosi Nityam, Tvam Vangmayastvam Chinmayah, Tvam Anandamayastvam Brahmamayah, Tvam Satchidananda Dvitiyosi, Tvam Pratyaksham Brahmasi, Tvam Jnanamayo Vijnanamayosi, Sarvam Jagadidam Twatto Jayate, Sarvam Jagadidam Twattastishtati, Sarvam Jagadidam Tvayi Layaneshati, Sarvam Jagadidam Tvayi Pratyeti, Tvam Bhumirapo Nalo Nimo Nabha, Tvam Chatvari Vakparimitani, Tvam Gunatrayatitah, Tvam Avasthatrayatitah, Tvam Dehatrayatitah, Tvam Kalatrayatitah. So that is the power of Ganesha, and this Ganapati Atharva Shirsha explains it so clearly. Once you understand that, we suddenly think, what are we doing? Why are we fighting amongst each other? What is the use of all of this? So that is the beautiful mantra which everyone can listen to. Ganesha is the supreme power of this world. Ganesha means the Lord of everything, basically. Instead of solely focusing, actually, in order to focus on the supreme, you need an idol. For most people. Some people can do it without that. Hats off to them. But most of us require an idol. And even those who have surpassed the level of needing an idol also use the idol. You can see historical examples for that. People who are great at meditation also will use an idol, because we have the brain, we have body, mind, and soul. So whenever you're chanting mantras, keep an idol of that deity in front of you and chant it. You will see the difference. Chanting just in front of nothingness as such is difficult for most people. So Ganesha is there, Om Namo Narayana is there, extremely powerful. Om Namah Shivaya is also very powerful. Om Namah Shivaya is based on 5 aksharas. And if you look at the Arka flower that is offered to Lord Shiva, that has 5 petals. And the Sri Rudram is supposed to be chanted 5 times minimum on special days, 11 times as well, Ekadashi Rudram. And sometimes Sri Rudram is chanted 11 square actually, and sometimes 11 to the power of 11 also. So that is a very powerful mantra. In ancient times it was chanted. So Sri Rudram is also extremely powerful in destroying negative influences. Utilize eclipses, full moon days, new moon days, Ekadashis, Chaturthis, Shashtis, Ashtamis for chanting of mantras. For example, Ekadashis and Dwadashis chant Vishnu mantras. Chaturthis chant Ganesha mantras. Try to be on fasting when chanting mantras. At least chant mantras early in the morning before we have breakfast. That is also highly effective. If you're doing already fasting, chant mantras on those days. The effect is wholesome to the body and the mind. So all of this is not going to impact only you, but also the whole world. That's the beauty of it. And thereby answering the question that you had, Akka, I'm very sure that mantra chanting will transform the whole world if done by people. Agnihotra is another level that is even more greater than even mantra chanting. Along with mantra, Agnihotra together is a really powerful combination. When mantra and japa and Agnihotra are done together, that's the greatest thing. Along with this, if Abhisheka is done, even greater. And it is very heartening to see that today, our government itself is actually doing some progress in these fields by inaugurating special structures with the help of, havans and homas. This is all very important for our country. And yeah, thank you so much.
Brilliant. Thank you so much, Abhigya ji.
And also, Ankiji, sorry, you also asked one question about Shankaracharya, the Adi Shankaracharya Bhagavad Pada. So I just looked up the historical data. I never thought about this, and that was a really good question. The Great Conjunction happened in 789 AD. And Adi Shankaracharya is known to be born 788. So you can just look at the similarity at that. So certainly the Great Conjunction has that powerful impact, even with Buddha, even with Christ as well. It's a similar combination. So I'm very much sure that, these are great influences. And Shankaracharya, one very important thing, when the Great Conjunction happened with, on 789, it happened in the Meena Rashi, basically, with Mercury together there. Whereas when it happened in 640 AD with Islam being founded, it happened in Kumbha Rashi with Shatabhishek Nakshatra, which is Rahu's Nakshatra. Here, in Shankaracharya's example, the very same thing happened in actually the very same thing happened in Uttara Bhadra Nakshatra. You can look at the transformation. Uttara Bhadra Nakshatra versus Shatabhishek Nakshatra is a great difference between the two. Uttara Bhadra is more of a brightening nakshatra, and it is Shani's nakshatra. It brings about great transformation. And also Guru and Shani were together with Buddha. Buddha is Buddhi. So Adi Shankaracharya did not use talwar. He did not use sword to go and kill everybody and force them to accede to some ideology. He transformed the world through the power of Buddhi and Tarka. So that's the difference. And that is why we revere him till date. And that is why he's considered an incarnation of Lord Shiva himself. And we are also supposed to follow his, words always. Bhaja Govindam, Bhaja Govindam, Bhaja Govindam Mudhamate.
Abhigya, it's been a wonderful session. We could talk for hours. I'm sure actually we'll have questions going on.
I didn't bore anybody.
Considering your time, we have to actually stop at some point. So I'm bringing it to an end at this point. But it's been a great session. We are blessed to have you with us. Vidya.
Thank you so much. And thank you so much for giving this opportunity as well. And I hope our listeners and viewers will have a good introspective time in understanding this and applying it to their lives. Dhanyavad and Jai Hind. Jai Bharat.
And we
I have
request
few
Abhigya ji to come onto our platform again. That would be, we'll really deeply cherish it if you are able to spend, your precious time and join us again. Thank you.
Dhanyavad.
Abhigya, I got a lot of questions in the back channel. I will send it to you separately. Maybe you can utilize them in your videos.
Sure. I would love to answer all of them as much as possible. Yes. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you so much.
And let Bhagavan have all the blessings on you. Thank you.
Dhanyavad.
Stay blessed always, Abhigya ji. Thank you so much.